Imagine you've been looking forward to something big for a long time. It could be starting your first day at a new job in a large company or competing in a big singing contest. You're excited, you've prepared, and you're ready to go. But just before it starts, you suddenly feel nervous. Your hands might sweat, your heart races, and you start second guessing everything. This feeling of fear and hesitation is known as getting cold feet. But where does this unusual phrase come from? What stories from history inspired this idiom? If you don't know, let's dive into a little story together to find out. Long ago, in a time when wars were fought with swords, shields, and bravery, soldiers would often find themselves facing battles in the harshest conditions. They would march for days through freezing weather, snowstorms, icy winds, and frozen ground. Imagine being a soldier during these times. Your armor is heavy, your muscles ache, and the icy cold bites at your skin. Worst of all, your feet are frozen from hours of marching through snow and ice. Now, as the soldiers approach the battlefield, they can see the enemy waiting in the distance. It's the final moment before battle, but some soldiers hesitate. Why? Their feet are so cold that they can barely move. Their bodies are frozen, and the fear of what's ahead only makes it worse. In some cases, soldiers with cold feet were too nervous or scared to charge into battle. They couldn't gather the courage to fight, and so they stayed back, stuck in place, literally and emotionally frozen. Their cold feet became a symbol of fear and hesitation, a sign that they weren't ready to face the challenge ahead. Over time, this physical experience of having cold feet started to take on a new meaning. It wasn't just about being too cold to walk or run. It became a way of describing the feeling of doubt and fear that can come just before you're about to do something important. One famous story that helped popularize this idea comes from an ancient Roman battle. It was a cold winter morning, and the Roman army was preparing for a fierce fight against a much larger enemy. The Roman soldiers, tired and freezing, had marched through snow all night. As the sun began to rise, they saw the enemy forces gathered across the field. But something was wrong. Despite their leader's orders to move forward, many of the soldiers were stuck in place. Their feet were numb from the cold, and fear began to creep into their hearts. Their leader, a brave and experienced general, noticed the hesitation and shouted, "Men, the cold can stop your feet, but don't let fear freeze your hearts." Some soldiers, inspired by his words, gathered their strength and marched into battle. But others remained behind, their cold feet stopping them from moving forward. This moment in history is just one example of how cold feet became a symbol, not just of physical coldness, but of emotional hesitation. Now, thankfully, most of us don't have to march into battle with freezing feet, but the phrase cold feet is still used. It's now a way to describe the nervousness or fear that sneaks in right before something important. Let's look at a few modern examples where people get cold feet. Imagine it's your wedding day. You've spent months planning, and everything is perfect. The flowers, the guests, the music. But just before you're about to walk down the aisle, a wave of doubt hits you. You start thinking, am I really ready for this? Is this the right decision? This is a classic example of cold feet. It doesn't mean you don't love your partner. It's just a natural fear of such a huge commitment. Now let's say you're about to give a big presentation at work. You've been preparing for weeks, rehearsing every word. But as you step up to the microphone, you suddenly feel like you can't do it. Your stomach is in knots, and your legs feel shaky. You've got cold feet. The fear of speaking in front of a crowd hits you all at once. Or maybe you've been offered an amazing job in a new city. It's everything you've been working toward. But as the moving day approaches, you start feeling scared. You think, what if I don't like the new place? What if the job isn't what I expect? This is another example of getting cold feet. The excitement of a big opportunity is there, But so is the fear of the unknown. So whether it's a big event like a wedding or just giving a speech, we've all had moments when we felt cold feet. It's completely normal to get nervous when facing something important. The key is to push through those doubts and fears, just like the brave soldiers in history who kept going, even when their feet were cold and their hearts were unsure. The next time you're about to take on something big and you feel that fear creeping in, remember that everyone gets cold feet at some point. What matters is finding the courage to keep moving forward, even when your feet or your heart want to stop. And that's the story behind the phrase cold feet.